the king's 3 questions and the poor man's answers. Dear children, once upon a time the king asked his 3 questions to his minister and the poor man told him the answers. It is mentioned that once the king was in a very good mood, he turned to his young minister and asked, "What is your greatest desire in your life?" The minister was embarrassed, he lowered his face. The king laughed and said, "Don't worry, you tell me the greatest wish of your life." The minister humbly said, "Oh my king, you are the owner of the most beautiful kingdom in the world. Every time I see this kingdom, a desire arises in my heart. If I had a 10% of it, I would be the luckiest person in the world." The king laughed and said, "If I give you half land of my kingdom?" The minister looked nervously and humbly said, "Oh my king, how it is possible? How could I be so lucky?" The king immediately called his deputy minister and ordered him to write 2 announcements. The king first ordered that half of his kingdom land be handed over to the young minister. In the second order, the king ordered the beheading of the minister. Both the ministers were surprised about this order. The king sealed the order and looking the minister in the eyes said, "You have 30 days' time. You have to find the correct and agreeable answers to these 3 questions within these 30 days. If you succeed, my second order will be cancelled and you will get half the kingdom. And if you fail, the first order will be revoked and your head will be beheaded according to the second order." The ministers surprised and turned to worry. The king then said, "Write down my 3 questions." The minister began to note down the king's question as he said, "What is the greatest truth of human life?" He said, "The second question is, what is the greatest deception of human life?" He stopped for a while and then said, "The third question is, what is the greatest weakness of human life?" The king then said in a loud voice, "Now your time is begin now." The minister took both orders and ran away from the palace. He gathered intellectuals, writers, thinkers, and intelligent people from all over the country this evening and put a question before them. But he could not form an opinion. The minister increased the number of scholars the next day, but the result was the same as before. He continued to increase the number of people in the following days, but could not get a satisfactory response until he left the capital in despair. He raised the question all over the country but could not get a satisfactory answer. He moved from city to city and village to village. The royal dress was torn, the turban hung loosely around his neck, his shoes were torn and his feet were blistered. Until the last day of the covenant came. He was to appear in court the next day. The minister believed that this was the last day of his life. Tomorrow his neck will be cut and his body will be hanged on the main bridge of the city. Desperate, he reached the slums of the capital. There was a beggar hut in the population area. He fell down and reached that hut. The poor beggar's man was eating his dry bread dipped in water and the beggar's dog was drinking milk. The beggar saw the condition of the minister, and laughingly said, "Sir, you are at the right place. I have answers to all 3 of your questions." The minister looked at him in surprise and asked, "How did you guess who I am and what is my problem?" The beggar placed pieces of dry bread on the plate for himself, smiled, and lifting his bed sack said to the minister, "Look here, you will understand." The minister looked down. Under the sack was a royal cover. This was the dress that the king used to gift to his close ministers. The poor man said, "I was also the minister of this kingdom. I once made the mistake of betting with a king like you, but now you can see the result for yourself." The minister asked dejectedly, "Did you also not get an answer?" The beggar laughed and replied, "My case was different than yours. I had the answer. I told the king the correct answers. And I tore up the order of half the empire. Saluted the king and came and sat in that hut. My dog and I are both living contented lives." The minister was surprised, but this was not the time to analyze the ex-minister's folly. It was time to find the answer. The minister asked the beggar, "Can you answer my questions?" The beggar nodded yes and replied, "I will answer the first 2 questions for free, but you will have to pay me for the third answer." The minister had no choice but to accept the condition. He immediately nodded in agreement. Beggar said, "The greatest truth in the world is death. Anyone or everyone has to taste death. He cannot escape this truth. The biggest illusion of human life is life. Each of us is under the illusion of eternal life." Both the beggar's answers were undeniable. The minister became devoted. Now he begged the beggar for the reply of the third answer. The beggar laughingly and took the cup of milk from his dog, gave it to the minister and said, "I will not answer the third question until you drink this milk." He set the bowl on the ground in disgust and did not want to drink the leftover dog's milk at any cost. The beggar shrugged and said, "Well, now you have 2 options. You refuse and the royal executioner will behead you tomorrow, or you will drink this half cup of milk and your life will be saved and you will also become the master of half the kingdom. But the decision is up to you anyway." The minister was in a dilemma. On one side was his life and half the empire, and on the other side was the dog's leftover milk. He thought until life and property were won and self-respect was lost. The minister picked up the cup and drank the milk in one gulp. The beggar laughed and said, "Son, the greatest weakness of man is desire, which requires him to drink even the leftover milk of a dog. This is the truth that made me sit in this hut after breaking the royal order. I knew that the more I cheated on life and the more I forgot about death, the more I would sink into the mire of desire, and I would have to drink the dirty milk of desire every day to breathe in that mire. So my advice is, know these 3 facts of life, your life will be good." The minister took the gift of embarrassment, shame, and selfishness and walked out of the beggar's hut towards the palace. As he approached the palace, his embarrassment grew, the feeling of humiliation grew within him, and he reached the palace gate with this feeling. A terrible pain arose in his chest, he fell from his horse, gave a long hiccup and his spirit flew away. Dear children, this story shows us a significant illustration, the genuine importance of life. Decide to carry on with a straightforward and humble life, rather we ought to endeavor to keep away from it, fixated on influence and riches, yet who learns the significance of modesty,